There is a tree that can grow several meters in a single year, survive extreme drought, and produce leaves so nutrient-dense they have been used to fight malnutrition in some of the most resource-limited regions in the world. And yet, in most countries, it is barely used at all. That gap between what a plant can do and how little it is actually used is not accidental. It is the result of how modern food systems decide what matters and what gets left behind. The moringa tree grows fast. In warm climates, it can reach several meters in a single year. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and heat. It does not ask for much. And yet, in most parts of the world where food security is a genuine concern, moringa is still considered a specialty crop rather than a staple. That contrast has a history behind it. And understanding that history means looking at how moringa was used, where it grew, and why its presence in mainstream agriculture never matched its potential. Some knowledge was never lost. It was simply waiting to be remembered. In this film, we explore how the moringa tree was used across cultures and centuries, what its leaves, seeds, and pods actually contain, and why this plant continues to be studied by researchers and cultivated by small farmers who understand what industrial food systems have generally passed over. The moringa tree, known scientifically as Moringa oleifera, is native to the foothills of the Himalayas in northwestern India. From there, cultivation spread across South Asia, East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and eventually into Central and South America. It is now grown across a wide band of tropical and subtropical regions. For centuries, the moringa tree was not treated as a supplement. It was treated as food. In India, its long green pods were cooked into daily meals. In East Africa, the leaves were added to sauces and porridges. In the Philippines, they became part of traditional dishes passed down through generations. This was not occasional use, it was routine. In regions where food variety was limited and seasons were unpredictable, moringa provided something most plants could not: consistency. What made this practical use significant was not folklore or reputation. It was the actual nutritional composition of the plant. Fresh moringa leaves contain meaningful amounts of vitamin C, vitamin A in the form of beta-carotene, calcium, potassium, and iron, along with an unusual amount of protein for a leafy plant. In some comparisons, gram for gram, the leaves rival or exceed common vegetables in multiple categories. The leaves can be dried and ground into a powder that concentrates many of these nutrients, making storage and transport more practical. Dried moringa leaf powder has a longer shelf life than most fresh vegetables and retains a substantial portion of its nutritional value if stored properly and away from prolonged heat or light. This was not a marginal food. It was dense, efficient nutrition growing on a tree. The seeds also have documented uses. They contain oil, sometimes called ben oil, which has been used in cooking and cosmetics. Moringa seed powder has been studied for its water clarification properties. When ground seeds are added to turbid water, proteins in the seed bind to suspended particles and cause them to settle, reducing cloudiness and some microbial content. This application was documented in use across communities in Africa and South Asia that lacked access to commercial filtration systems. The result is not just clearer water, but water that is safer to use, achieved with nothing more than a tree that grows locally. The tree's pods, leaves, flowers, and seeds have all been used in different contexts, which makes moringa one of the more versatile plant species in traditional agricultural systems. In regions where a single crop failure could create a food shortage, having a tree that produced multiple edible and useful parts across different seasons carried obvious value. This kind of whole plant utility was common in pre-industrial food systems. Plants were rarely selected for a single purpose. Utility across multiple dimensions, Food, medicine, material, and ecological function was part of how communities made use of what was available. Moringa fit that pattern well. Traditional medicine systems in South Asia attributed various therapeutic properties to different parts of the tree. Leaves, roots, bark, and seeds were all used in Ayurvedic and other regional practices. Some of these uses have been studied in modern contexts, with researchers examining compounds such as isothiocyanates, flavonoids, and glucosinolates found in the plant. Research is ongoing, and while some early findings are promising, the scientific community continues to evaluate claims carefully. What can be said with accuracy is that moringa contains bioactive compounds that are the subject of legitimate scientific interest, and that traditional uses of the plant were not arbitrary but reflected generations of observation. The tree also presents certain practical advantages for cultivation. It is fast-growing, reaching harvestable size relatively quickly after planting. It can be cut back and will regrow, allowing for repeated harvests from the same plant. It tolerates dry conditions better than many vegetables. In soils that would not support other crops, moringa can still survive and produce. These characteristics were not unknown to agricultural researchers. Moringa received attention from development organizations in the 1980s and 1990s as a potential tool for addressing malnutrition in tropical regions. Projects in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia introduced moringa cultivation as part of food security initiatives. The organization Trees for Life, and later the work of researchers connected with Lowell Fugley, helped document and promote moringa use as a practical nutritional resource in low-resource settings. Despite this, moringa did not become a globally dominant crop. It remained concentrated in regional markets and traditional food systems, with limited integration into commercial agriculture on a larger scale. The reasons have very little to do with the plant itself. Moringa does not store well as a fresh product. Its leaves spoil quickly. It does not fit easily into large-scale distribution systems. It is difficult to standardize, difficult to transport, and difficult to turn into a predictable commodity. And in modern agriculture, those factors matter more than nutritional value. There is also the basic reality of how agricultural systems allocate resources. Crops that generate consistent, predictable revenue at scale attract capital, research, and infrastructure. Crops that are versatile and nutritionally rich but difficult to standardize, harvest mechanically, or store long-term often remain at the margins. That does not reflect the plant's value. It reflects the structure of markets. What has shifted in recent years is both the volume of research on moringa and the range of settings in which it is being seriously evaluated. Academic interest in moringa has grown substantially since the early 2000s. Studies have examined its potential applications in nutrition, water treatment, and agroforestry. Researchers in countries including India, Nigeria, Senegal, and the Philippines have published work on its properties and on practical applications in community settings. At the same time, small-scale growers and food sovereignty organizations have continued to use moringa in the way it was always used, as a reliable, low-maintenance source of nutrition for households and communities that need access to diverse food options without dependence on complex supply chains. The tree does not require much to thrive. Seeds germinate easily. Transplants establish quickly. In the right climate, a single tree provides a recurring harvest of leaves across multiple months of the year. For smallholder farmers in tropical regions, that reliability has ongoing practical value that statistics about global market share do not fully capture. Moringa's position today is something of a paradox. It is widely discussed in nutritional research. It is sold commercially in dozens of countries. And yet it remains underutilized relative to its demonstrated capacity to grow in difficult conditions and provide a consistent nutritional contribution in places where that contribution is genuinely needed. That gap between knowledge and integration is not new. It has characterized many plants whose utility was well understood in regional and traditional contexts, but which never translated into the kind of systemic adoption that would make them standard rather than supplemental. The moringa tree is not a new discovery. It is not a recent development in nutritional science. Communities in South Asia and East Africa were growing and eating it long before it appeared on the shelves of health food stores in other parts of the world. That history is not a marketing point. It is simply a record of what worked, in what conditions, for whom, and for how long. The knowledge of how to grow it, harvest it, and use it is documented, distributed, and available. The moringa tree has not changed. It still grows quickly. It still survives in poor soil. It still produces nutrient-dense leaves and useful seeds in environments where many crops fail. What has changed is the system around it, and what that system chooses to prioritize. A tree that can grow in difficult conditions and provide consistent nutrition exists. The question is not whether it works. The question is why it remains on the market.